Hello, I've got a couple of wordy questions today for our starters. So just have a read through these. If you think you know what you're doing, then just pause it, get on with it, and then check in when you've done it. Okay, so first one. During lockdown, Danny has been gaining weight at a rate of 0.8% per week. At the beginning of lockdown, he weighed 75 kilograms. How much does he weigh now, 12 weeks later? I think that's something that a lot of us have been struggling with a bit during lockdown, but we'll have a look at the actual maths of it. So, at the start of lockdown, Danny's weight was 100%, okay? He's been gaining weight at a rate of 0.8% per week. So remember, what we need to do is think about compound percentages. So at the end of each week, Danny will weigh 108% of what he weighed the week before. Okay, sorry, 100.8%. I think I said 108. 100.8% of what he weighed the week before. So 0.8% maybe doesn't seem like very much, but we'll see what effect that has. So remember, when we're doing compound percentages, we start with our initial amount, so that's our 75 kilograms, and we multiply it by, remember it has to be this as a decimal, so we divide that by 100 to get the decimal, so it would be 1.008, and that's going to be to the power 12. So if you grab a calculator and work that out, so 75 times 1.008 power 12 is 82.5254, and lots of other decimal places. So we'll be sensible and give this to one decimal place. So we'll say 82.5 kilograms. Okay, so putting weight on at a steady rate of only 0.8% a week leads to a 7.5 kilo weight gain over 12 weeks. Okay, which is actually just over a stone. Okay, so next question. The price of petrol has gone down 24% since the middle of March. It costs 99 pence a litre now. What did it cost in the middle of March? Okay, so now we're in a reverse percentages situation because the price has gone down by 24% and now it's 99 pence a litre. Okay, so it's lost 24%, so it's at 76%. Okay, so 76% of the price at the middle of March is 99p. Okay, so remember what we do here is we find 1% and then we find 100%. So 1%, you're going to do 99 divided by 76. And then to get your 100%, you've got your 99 divided by 76, and then you just multiply that by 100. So if you need to check back how to do this, it's the reverse percentages lesson. Okay, so again, just use calculator. 99 divided by 76 times 100 gives you 130.2631 blah 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 blah. And remember, this is money and we started out in pence. Okay, so let's give this as an amount of pounds because that makes more sense because this is pence. So it'll be 130 pence if we're rounding it to pence. So it's £1.30. Okay. Sometimes at petrol stations they give it in pence, but to the to one decimal place. So that would be 130.3 pence if that's what was displayed. Okay. Excuse me. Right, so we're getting to the end of solving equations now. So today's work is solving equations with fractions. So I hope you will take heart from the fact that you now have all the skills you need for this section of work on solving equations. There's no new skills that I need to teach you. We just need to know how to apply all the skills or some of the skills, and we need to know which skills to apply in what situation. Okay, so today's work is about equations with fractions, and then tomorrow's work is just going to be looking at equations of different types. Okay, so we need to be able to solve equations with fractions like these two here. Okay, now if we just in the first place think that this fraction is multiplying the x, then we could go about and solve the rest of the equation just as we would normally. So our first step would be to subtract 2 from both sides. So we'd only be left with 3/4 x on the left hand side, and on the right hand side we'd have 8. Now, what this means is happening to x, so 3/4 of x means x divided by 4 and times by 3, doesn't it? If we have to work out 3/4 of something, we divide by 4 and times by 3. So when we're undoing that, we have to do the opposite. Okay, so the opposite of dividing by 4, so the opposite of this here is times 4. And remember, when you do the opposite of something, it disappears. So on the left hand side now, we've only got 3x because the 4's gone. We've done the opposite of divide by 4. And on the right hand side, we've got 32. And then it's just like a normal one. Divide by 3. So that gives us x equals, 32 is not in the 3 times table. So we'll just write it as 32 over 3 first. Then we have a think to see if that will simplify, and it won't. So then if we want to, we can write that as a mixed number, and there are 10 3's in 32 and 2 left over. So either the answer 32 over 3 or 10 2/3 would be fine. Okay. Next. This one. So let's go with what we've been doing. We've got options of how to solve equations with fractions, to be honest, but I want to stick with the skills that you already know. So what we're going to do is multiply out the bracket first, and then go ahead as we would normally. So a half times x is a half x. A half times 6 is 3, equals 5. Remember, a half times means the same as a half of. Okay, so next job would be to subtract 3 from both sides. So that'll give us a half x equals 2. And then think about what's happening here. This means x divided by 2, doesn't it? A half x. And we could say times 1, but we don't need to do that. So x divided by 2 is equal to 2, or a half of x is equal to 2. So we need to multiply both sides by 2 to get rid of this divide by 2. So that'll give us x on the left-hand side equals 4. And we can just check that that makes sense, because if we look at this line, a half of 4 equals 2. And if we look even at the top line, 4 add 6 is 10. So a half of 10 is 5. So we know we've got the right answer because it all works out just fine. Okay. So we're just going to do these 4, and then I'm going to show you one that's a little bit trickier, and that'll be us for today. Okay, so we're going to follow exactly the same process as we've been doing for solving the other equations. All right, so the first thing here, just think about the 3/5 as a number that's multiplying x at the moment, so that we deal with this first. Okay, so we're going to subtract 3 from both sides to start with, which will leave us with 3/5 of x on the left-hand side and 8 on the right-hand side. So now we can see that 3/5 of x, that means x divided by 5 times 3. So we need to do the opposite of those things. Okay, so we're going to deal with the 5 first. So we're going to multiply by 5 because x is being divided by 5 just now. So that'll give us 3x is equal to 40. And then divide by 3. And again, 40 is not in the 3 times table. So 40 divided by 3, we're just going to write as 40 over 3, which is a fraction that won't simplify. And then if we want to write it as a mixed number, there are 13 3's in 40. 13 3's are 39. So we've got 1 left over. So either 40 over 3 or 13 1/3 would be fine there. And for the next one, we've got 1/3 times x, so that's 1/3 of x. And then we've got 1/3 times 9, so 1/3 of 9 is 3. And that's equal to -2. So we're going to now subtract 3 from both sides. So that'll give us 1/3 of x on the left-hand side equals, we've got -2, take away 3, so that's -5. Now we've got 1/3 of x, so that means x divided by 3. So if we're going to find out what x is, we're going to have to multiply by 3. Multiply both sides by 3. So then we'll get, the third will disappear on the left-hand side, leaving us with just x, and then -5 times 3. So a negative times a positive is going to be a negative because the signs don't match, and then 5 3s are 15. And the next one, if we have a look at this one, x over 2 plus 7 equals 5. So that's written slightly differently, but I just need to point out to you that x over 2 means x divided by 2. Okay, and if you divide something by 2, you're finding a half of it. So x over 2 and a half x mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so we're not going to deal with that first. We're going to deal with the 7 by subtracting it from both sides. So that leaves us with x over 2 equals, 5 take away 7 is -2. And then x is being divided by 2, so we need to multiply both sides by 2. A lot of 2's here. So we get x equals -2 times 2 is -4. Okay, and then the last one from this set before we do one tricky one is going to be, right, first of all, we multiply at the bracket 3/4 times 8. So 3/4 times 8 means 3/4 of 8. And remember, the way that you work out a fraction is you divide by the bottom and then times by the top. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, times 3 is 6. And then we've got 3/4 x there, from 3/4 times -x equals 18. Right, now if we have a look, our letters are negative, and remember we don't like it when the letters are negative, we try and fix that. So what we're going to do is indeed fix that by adding 3/4 x to both sides. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we've still got 6. On the right-hand side, we've got 18 plus 3/4 x. Okay, so now we can continue our usual plan. So take away 18. So 6 take away 18 is -12. And that's equal to 3/4 of x. And remember, 3/4 of x means x divided by 4 times 3. So we're going to multiply by 4 to start with. And that will get rid of the 4 on the right-hand side. So -12 times 4 is -48. And that gives us 3x, because the 4's gone now. And then dividing by 3 gives us -16 is equal to x, or x equals -16. Okay. And the last one that we're going to do is a trickier one. So it's just trickier because you've got the x's on both sides, as well as brackets and as well as fractions. Okay, nothing that we can't handle though. So let's multiply out the bracket first. So we've got a half of x, add 9 times a half, or a half times 9. We could write that in a couple of different ways. A half of 9 is 4.5, isn't it? So let's just write it as 4.5 there, just now. Equals 2x minus 13. Okay, so let's do the usual thing now, because we've got x's on both sides. So we need to get the x's onto one side only, and we'll bring baby to mummy. So what that means for us is we're going to subtract a half x from both sides. Okay, so that just leaves us with 4.5 on the left hand side. Now, if you've got 2x and you take away a half of x, whatever x is, if you've got 2 of something and you take a half of one, so 2 chocolate bars and you take away a half of a chocolate bar, that leaves you with 1.5, doesn't it? So we've got 1.5 x's left, minus 13. So we're now going to add 13 to both sides. I told you this one was a bit trickier because of the numbers. So if we add 13 to 4.5, that's going to give us 17.5. And that is equal to 1.5x. And it's still looking a bit yucky, isn't it? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change both of these mixed numbers to improper fractions. Okay, so 2 times 17 is 34, add 1 is 35. So this is the same as 35 over 2. Okay, and then 1.5 is the same as 3 over 2. So that makes things a little bit easier to deal with now. So x is being divided by 2 and multiplied by 3. So the first job is going to be to multiply both sides by 2. And look at what happens there is the 2 disappears from here because this is being divided by 2, but also this side is being divided by 2. So multiplying both sides by 2 actually just gets rid of the 2's altogether, leaving us with 35 equals 3x. Now we can breathe a sigh of relief because the fractions are all gone, so we can divide both sides by 3. 35 divided by 3 is, well, 35 is not in the 3 times table, so we'll write it as 35 over 3 just now. So x equals 35 over 3. Or, if we want to change that into a mixed number, there are 11 3's in 35, that makes 33, so there's 2 left over. So 35 over 3, or 11 2/3, would be your answer there.